Do you have some pattern paper you're looking to use up? Or do you want to get started on those Valentine cards without creating a bunch of scraps to deal with next year? Hi, I'm Jess from jesscrafts.com, and I'm going to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So let's get started. Today I'm working with the Fancy Pants 6x8 paper collection called My Type. I've worked with 6x8 paper pads in the past that include like those larger home decor type elements or the 3x4 cut-aparts, and those are great, but this Fancy Pants collection does not have any of that. It's more like a traditional pattern paper pack where there's just a pretty pattern printed top to bottom. What I'm going to do is I have a bunch of 6x8 one sheet wonder templates that I have designed. They work with A2 size cards. I also have some for 5x7 cards, but today I'm going to be making A2, which is 4¼ by 5½. And I just decided to pick some that I thought would work well with this collection. So I noticed that in this collection, there are 6 different papers, and then I believe there's 4 of each paper. So I picked 6 templates that I thought would work well. And then I have these envelopes that contain in a whole 8½ by 11 piece of paper, and that's so that my templates fit in it. I wouldn't need something so big if I was just trying to get my paper to fit in. But I'm going to look through the paper pad with one of the templates sitting next to me and go, okay, which paper do I think will work best for this template? And then I pulled those out and I'm going to slip it into this large envelope with the coordinating template so that I have a plan for what to do with this entire paper pad. Now, when I started, I thought I would use up the whole paper pad, and so I pulled out all 4 sheets of each paper that I decided to go with. But in the end, I realized that I did not want to spend that much time with this particular set of paper. I'm actually not a big fan of too many sheets of any one individual pattern, and this one had 4, which I consider to be quite a lot. I kind of prefer when it's just like 2, so that when I'm doing this sort of system, I don't have to be making like 16 of a single card, because some of these templates, they make 4 cards and 4 pieces of paper, 16. So I just was not wanting to do that many. You absolutely could, and I am going to be doing some Copic coloring to go with it, and that also really made it take a lot longer of a time. So in the end, I'm only going to make 18 cards, but you could absolutely follow this tutorial to use up the entire paper pad if that works better for you. So once I have all of my paper picked out with the coordinating template, I actually stopped to think about how I would embellish them. And I know this is not how, if you make one-off cards, you probably don't do this process. But if you're looking to use a bunch of paper at one time or make a bunch of cards at one time, it can be really helpful to add some of these planning steps in, like picking out your templates and paper or deciding how you're going to do your coloring, embellishing, etc. I decided that I wanted to use this set from My Favorite Things. It's called Hugs Make Everything Better. It has the 2 little bunnies hugging, 2 dogs, 2 cats, and 2 foxes. I did not use the foxes because I wanted to be able to keep them all nice and neutral. I picked a set of warm grays, and I'm going to do absolutely all of my Copic coloring for every card in that, because then it will match every single pattern paper that is in this collection. And if I did the foxes, technically Arctic foxes could be this color, but they, traditionally tend to be orange, so I just picked these 3 and I stamped them a bunch of times. Ultimately, I needed to color 18 of these. This is sped up, and it does not even show all of the coloring of one image. So each image probably took between 5 to 10 minutes to color, and then I had to color 18 of them. So you can see that would really add up fast, and is maybe not ideal for if you want to use an entire paper pad. But there were some time-saving things I did, like just picking one set of markers to color all of them. And once I've decided where all the shadows should be on one of them, the next time I color the bunnies, I don't have to think about that. I've just kind of made a decision about what looks good. I did a pretty dark shadow, but I left the shadow areas really, really small. And I did most of the areas in the W00 so that most of the areas would be the very lightest color. And then I even went back and retraced some of my shadows and added little flicks of the darkest shadow color where the artist, Stacy Yakula, has drawn those little fur lines. And that helps to emphasize the shadows and emphasize the furriness that is kind of unique to her stamps. Her stamps have these thin lines and the little like different texture pieces that actually make it hard to cut with Scan and Cut. And they have coordinating dies available, or you could, of course, fussy cut them, but you can't fussy cut right onto the line because her lines are not solid. So another thing to consider, but I think her stamps are gorgeous and I don't mind fussy cutting them when I want to use them. Okay, first design. So from here on out, I'm just going to be showing you how I use the templates and assemble the cards. This is One Sheet Wonder template number 6, or for 6x8. You'll note, if you follow along, you'll notice that I have the same template in 6x6, and that's because this design works both ways. The sketch is the same, and you just cut 2-inch squares. You can cut 2-inch squares out of 6x6 paper, 6x8 paper, 8x8 paper, 12x12, whatever one you have, and then follow this same sketch where you just assemble the 2x2 squares in that little pattern. You could, of course, mix up how you assemble those 2x2 squares, and it can work well as a landscape card if that's better for you. I like it better as a portrait card. Another time-saving thing, I mentioned like I did all the animals in the same color. I also did all of my cardstock mats in the same color. So rather than thinking about which cardstock mat was perfect for each individual pattern paper, I just looked at the overall collection and noticed that there was this blue tone going through it. And I said, I'm just going to make every single mat navy blue, which I know some people probably it would not appeal to them because some people don't think like navy blue and black work well together. And for instance, I have a black paper here, but I think that it worked out fine. And for most of them, that's not the problem. Just another little time-saving thing I did. I, as you could see, had the template in the top left-hand corner of my desk so that when I am assembling the cards, I know exactly how I want everything to look because I'm referencing the template. Also, I'm keeping them all, so once I've cut the 6x8 paper into the 2x2 squares, that's all going in that envelope that I showed at the beginning. And then when I cut the cardstock mats to 2 1/4 by 2 1/4, because almost always with my One Sheet Wonder templates, I call for 1/4 inch mats. Those are also going to sit in the envelope until I'm ready to assemble the cards. I have put foam tape, well, I put fake foam tape on the back of all of the animals. So basically I just took either scraps of cardstock that I glued together to give them some dimension, or like scraps of cardboard that I've gotten, in packaging and that kind of thing, and I glue it behind them. And that raises it up. And then I'm going to use that Hugs die from Paper Rose, and again on every single card in the same colors. I'm not going to keep making that decision. I'm going to make it one time, and that's going to help to speed up the process because I have decided, I really enjoy Copic coloring, and I do some much more intense Copic coloring that I share on my Instagram page. So if you like Copic coloring, you might want to check that out. Jess.crafts on Instagram. The link is always in the video description too. But if I was going to spend that much time coloring, I wanted to make other parts of the card assembly process easier. And that's things like picking one color of markers or one color set of markers, the cardstock, the Hugs die because it works with all of them, etc., etc. So you do not have to worry about the measurements for any of these templates because these are downloadable PDF templates. You go over to the blog post that's in the video description. You download these. You can print them off in black and white or color. It should be pretty clear either way. I worked with them in black and white for many years before, or for over a year before I got a color printer. And I think it works well that way as well. I do find that if you're using a thicker cardstock for your matting, you do sometimes want to add a little bit of something to boost up the layers. So like here you can see that those two strips with the love pattern paper on it, they layer over each other, and then that square layers over on top of it. And so they kind of start bumping over each other. I happen to be using a very thin cardstock, which I ordinarily would not do, but I'm having a bit more difficulty sourcing a high quality navy at a good price. I usually get my cardstock as Michael's Recollections 100-pound, but I can't find navy in that. And so I bought their 65 weight, which does work for things like matting and even the die cutting. But in general, I do prefer something a little bit thicker just so that it just doesn't bend as much, or it can take a little bit of, like if I've glued something down and I need to peel it off, the thinner cardstock is more likely to rip or not hold up and that kind of thing. So it's just my personal preference. Here I am working on One Sheet Wonder. So I did One Sheet Wonder number 6, 8, and now I'm on number 5. Again, don't have to worry about it. You go to the blog post. It'll show you a picture of the finished card, kind of like I'm interjecting in the video. And then it will tell you what sketch it is. And then you download the sketch and it tells you exactly how to cut everything. So whatever one that you like, then you'll be able to, get that one multiple times. And if you want to use a 6x8 paper pad, but you don't like some of the particular sketches I chose, I have like 10 of them available and I use 6. So there's some other choices out there that maybe would better suit the pattern paper that you want to use. This one has some some rectangles in the background and then a main focal point panel. I like to do ones that have a larger panel to focus on, but that can be kind of limiting because there's once you've cut a big chunk of the paper up, there's not much to do with the rest of it. But I do really like those, and I tried to include a few of those and some that are smaller. The ones that are smaller, like the last two I did, template number 6 and 8, they tend to make more cards too. And one of the things that I like to be careful with my One Sheet Wonders is I don't want them to make too many cards. 4 is usually about my limit, and I usually try to only do 2. Because when I was first introduced to the idea of One Sheet Wonders, I would see they'd be like, here's how you can make 6 cards with one sheet of 6x6 paper. And I thought, well, this is cute, but I'm never going to get through all my paper at that rate. Like, I don't know, I buy a 6x6 paper pad and there's 36 sheets of paper. Well, then you multiply that by 6, which is math I'm not going to do off the top of my head, but it's over 200. I don't need 200 cards every time I buy a pack of 6x6 paper. So I do try to keep it a little bit on the lower end of how many you make with any one sheet of paper, so that if you are trying to kind of get through your stash a little bit, you can choose some of the ones that only make 1 or 2 cards per. And again, that's why there's a lot of choices. There's like 60 different templates on the blog for different sizes of pattern paper and different sizes of cards, etc., etc. Moving on to 6x8 template number 1. This is actually one of my favorites because it works with those 3x4 cut aparts that a lot of 6x8 papers have, and it is super, super simple, but I really like the way that it turns out. This particular pattern paper pack has double-sided paper, and I am taking advantage of that on each of my designs. It is one sheet of paper cut up, but you'll see there's 2 different designs, and that's because I'm flipping it over and choosing one side for, like, here, like, all the background elements are the stripe paper, and then the focal point or the larger piece is the other side of the pattern paper. So it may look like I'm mixing more than one pattern paper, but I'm not because it's double-sided. If your paper isn't double-sided, although I don't actually know of any 6x8 paper that isn't, these still work. You could use the whole pattern throughout. I just like the way that it breaks it up. I'm working on 6x8 One Sheet Wonder number 10 now. This is another one that makes 4. There, I ran out of ATG tape. I left that in because if you like ATG tape or the idea of ATG tape and you just have been struggling with it, I do have a video where I talk about some different troubleshooting things, and I'll leave that in the video description, but like it explains very slowly and carefully how to reload your ATG in case that's an issue. And then some other little things that I like to do because it is my like go-to adhesive. It can be a little bit expensive at first if you look at like the retail price or the price in the craft store. But if you buy your tape refills through a place like, I buy them from Tape Jungle. I've heard Tape Depot too, but you can buy like a bunch of them at one time, and it is so much cheaper than any other adhesive out there. So if you just need a couple pointers on ATG, I'll link that video. I was really happy to see that just making a bold decision, going like, okay, I'm just going to use this Hugs for every single card, actually worked out, because as you can see here, the focal panel of this card, which is that like wood grain, that's where in the sketch you can kind of see like that's where you're supposed to put your sentiment and whatever you want to draw the reader's attention. It's a much different size than some of the other ones. Like some of them are 2x2 squares, some of them are 3x4 squares or 3x4 rectangles. Yet the stamp set and die worked out for all of them. And I do think that if I chose like a really big die or some really big stamps, that probably wouldn't be true. But I do think it's a good example to show you that if you have that willingness to make it work, you can be a little bit more bold in those choices and just go like, you know what, I'm like, this is going to be fine. This is going to look good on a small panel, a big panel, whatever, because I have taken the time at the beginning to consider how all the colors mesh together or the general size of it, and I don't have to overthink it and choose a new perfect die for each one of these different sizes of focal points, for example. This last One Sheet Wonder template number 4 is a little bit tricky because of the triangles that you have to cut out. And I didn't show you me cutting all of the cardstock or pattern paper because I don't think that's very interesting. And again, the template tells you exactly what size it all needs to be. But this one you do want to be a bit more careful, and I would recommend drawing the pattern of the triangles on the piece of paper with pencil before cutting it so that you can see that you've done the pattern correctly, because I have mistakenly cut this the wrong way more than once, because I'll draw it the first time, then I'll be like, oh, I've got this. And then I don't, and it doesn't, and I cut it wrong. So that could just be a me thing. But if you're like me and you need to take an extra beat, then yeah, I draw it out in pencil, cut it, and then erase it, or draw it on the back side. Like I knew I was going to use the star side, so I drew it on the banner side. And then when I cut it, I didn't have to worry about erasing it because it was the wrong side. A little tip there, and just wanted to point that out because while I love the look of this template, it does take a little extra time to cut because it's not just rectangles, it's these fancy little triangles. And I wasn't thinking about it when I recorded this, but I have my base layer for running on, which is why my sleeves are very colorful. I'm not usually one to wear such extreme patterns. If you found this video inspiring, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.